So DataLenz. When you log into DataLenz, you're going to get a dashboard. And okay, so a dashboard. What else does it give you? So we think of DataLenz as being 4 different lenses. Those being the who, the when, the how, and the where. And we'll go through those right quick. First off being the who. So who is accessing our data? Okay. So here with DataLenz, we're showing, this is our mainframe that we have for development, and it sits in Dallas, as you can see on this map. So here we can see who has been accessing the mainframe. We see, obviously, date, the source, the type of access, the resource they accessed. You can start to sort on the who. Who has been accessing the mainframe, and what all did they do? Where were they from? But this solves the lens of who.
Okay, so if you wanted to see, for instance, who had accessed this customer insured data file 1, if you wanted to see who had accessed that particular file, I don't know how you would do that today. Maybe you run SMF. With DataLenz, you can see, who has accessed that particular file, and we can bring up the insights, and you can see that the number of users. There's 3 users that have accessed this particular file, and we can drill down to some forensics. So if you scroll down here, and you can see, okay, this IBM user, ICO RPJ0, RPJ1 has accessed it, and this is how many times they've accessed it, that particular file. Now, that's just one file. It's a test file on our system. DataLenz makes it simple to see who's accessing these particular types of files. And you may say, well, who cares? Well, you may want to know, because that may be some information that was, FTP'd to a PC somewhere. So, we track all that information and we report that through DataLenz.
And it's super, super easy and quick to learn about this. So, I typically, you might have to run a report or something to see this kind of information. I log in, I click here, and I click on the file, and boom, now I can see who and how many times this has been accessed. I mean, that took 3 seconds maybe. Right. And it's visual. Maybe I need someone, not a programmer, not savvy to the mainframe. They can still look at this and understand what's happening here. This is how DataLenz would solve the who. So sometimes it's important to know when things are being accessed, right?
Right, absolutely.
And maybe you just need to know what's the most expensive time of day for a data set to be accessed. Mm-hmm. When is it being accessed the most? When is it being accessed the least? Mm-hmm. When is it being accessed out of a time that's odd? So let's look at that. It just takes a second. Right here we have a chart that shows all the mainframe accesses by time of day. And you can see right around lunch to 1 o'clock is the heaviest time for this particular date range. Visually, I can see that this is the highest. So why is it the highest? You click on it, and now I can see everything that's happening within that time hour. So maybe you have an overseas developer, and you want to see how often and when they're accessing the mainframe. You could drill down, these might be after hours, and you can see who was accessing that kind of outside of normal business hours for your time zone. So let's say you want to look at something that would be a really odd hour for your normal business operation. Let's say like 3 a.m. Okay, so we have 77 accesses at 3 a.m. to our mainframe, and so right now I'm not sure how you would get that information, or even if you could. Maybe it's a number and series of reporting, and you have to kind of pour through that data. Right here, it's visual. It literally takes this long. This is our access by time. I expand this and click on 3 a.m. and then boom, I get to see who, what, when, where on 3 a.m. our mainframe was being accessed. So now we can define when and who. Now we want to talk about how. And by how, we mean what type of access occurred. So right here we have events by access type. We can see the majority of this were read accesses, some write. Really quickly, I can see the number and type of access that were happening in this date range to our mainframe. So maybe you have a file that you want to know how many times was this being written to, let's say last week. It took that long. I was able to see how many reads and writes for last week, and it just took a moment. And now I can drill down and really see the details of what that access was.
If somebody is taking a file, maybe it's some critical file that you have, and they're downloading it to their PC. If someone inadvertently deleted it, or you maybe have a job that's corrupted a file, you'd be able to see that as well. The reads and writes are important because it tells you the activity globally as to how your mainframe is being utilized from a read and write perspective, or other activities that correspond to it.
And so it's super easy to say, I want to know today, I want to know this week, I want to know this month. Right. I may want to know the whole year. And it's just that simple, just a few clicks, and we're able to display that data and something that's usable and visual. And then finally, our claim to fame is the where. Right now, I think we're one of the only people that are doing this in this space. And that is, where was the mainframe access? Where did it happen from? So we are able to display where these mainframe accesses are happening from, display them on a map, and even drill down and show you on a map where those are happening, which is important because a number of reasons. One, a bad actor from a black state. You're based out of Chicago, and all of a sudden you see a number of accesses from New York. And why is that? And who is it? And where are they? And we're able to display that information. A lot of people, their first reaction to hearing this is like, well, what if someone's just operating behind a VPN? Well, with our technology, we're actually able to see beyond the VPN and able to pinpoint exactly where these people are from.
Based on the technology that we offer with DataLenz. I mean, basically any of the, we capture that real IP address at boot time, and whether they access a VPN or not, once they connect to the mainframe, we report that back to DataLenz what the real VPN is, no matter what the IP address that shows up when they connect, when we know where they're at and what the real IP is.
So our mainframe is based in Dallas, and here we can see a number of accesses that were happening in Europe. So if I click here, I can see some of those were happening from Germany, and which might be an anomaly for me. So I want to say, where were they actually located? I click on this map button, and I can see exactly where they're from. And this is a unique and patent pending piece of our technology that you only get with DataLenz. So able to see where mainframe accesses occur is huge. The capabilities and the knowledge that's gained from this is immense. You can even do things like a geofence with DataLenz if you wanted to know when people are outside of a 100-mile radius of where you operate. Those are things that DataLenz can tell you.
Maybe you only allow access from the state of Virginia, and now you have people accessing from outside of that. You can readily see where they were and what they accessed and who they were.
There was an access from South America. I just click on the map and I can instantly see the resources that were accessed, the user that accessed it, the group that they're in, and the city and region that they're from. If you work in the HR department or you work in system programming, you are responsible for a number of different data sets.
Right.
It's not just one. You have a bunch. And with DataLenz, we're able to take all those data sets you're responsible for and put them kind of under one roof. And that group of data sets is then monitored by DataLenz as a whole. That way, anything that you're responsible for that falls under your purview, you're able to see and filter that out with DataLenz. Mm-hmm. That way, it's not just to the specific data set level, though we can do that. This is a way to put it all in one box that lets you monitor it holistically. So with each of these optics of DataLenz, the who, the when, the how, and the where, those by themselves are informative, but where the real power of DataLenz shines is whenever you layer those on top of each other, much like you would layering lenses on like a telescope. Whenever you have those layered over each other, then you get to really see things in greater detail, things that you wouldn't have seen before. For example, if you wanted to know when a write access was performed, but you also want to know who did it and what time they did it and where from, that becomes way more compelling piece of data than just knowing that an access occurred or when it occurred. It's having those bits of data and information layered on top of each other. Things become far more powerful, and that's really where DataLenz begins to shine. But having all that wealth of knowledge, it still is hard to know what you need to be looking for. You don't know what you don't know. You need to have ways to be alerted when things become kind of out of the norm, and we do that through user behavior modeling. After you've installed DataLenz starts to monitor normal activity. And over time, whenever things become out of the norm, let's say there's an unusual write access for a particular data set on a particular day that exceeds a threshold, you'll become alerted to it. You wouldn't have known that otherwise. But DataLenz is kind of overseeing the mainframe and can alert you when things kind of look out of the norm. And that's one of our features of behavior modeling.
For instance, you've got a user that is accessing data in a particular way and has for the last 5 years, but all of a sudden the accesses become a different time of day, different location, excessive access. That's where DataLenz will say, hey, this is something that's unusual, and it'll bring it to your attention. That way you can monitor thousands of users without having to manually drill down into this information. We make that available to you.
And that's important if that's something that you need to know sooner than later, because whenever there is, a security issue or something that's from an infrastructure standpoint, the sooner you know and able to patch that hole, the better.
Yeah.
And you can't be looking for a problem that you didn't know existed. Right. With DataLenz is doing that work for you and looking for anomalies, is what we call them, that fall beyond the normal use case.
Yeah, because you may have users that they may access or do reads 200,000 times a day, and all of a sudden it goes to 600,000. DataLenz will let you know, hey, this is an unusual activity for this user, and flag that. Just
like this example here, this timestamp, this resource, and this user ID, we have an unusual access from this city, and it alerted us to that once we looked at our anomalies here.
Right.
So we pull this up, and we see that there's an unusual access from the city of Purcell, and here I can set up an alert, and we'll get into that in a minute. DataLenz is looking at all the parameters, not just one. It's looking at time of day, users, groups, the type of access, data sets, all those things together, which makes it immensely powerful to let you know how things are being accessed on the mainframe that you can't keep your hand on normally. There's not enough reporting you can do to know all these different pieces of telemetry that happen on the mainframe to be able to see when things are kind of out of the norm.
Yeah, and it does that in a real-time environment. And, we process on our system in Dallas. We do this anomaly detection every 5 minutes, and it could be every 5 seconds if you wanted to. And you'll know now instead of maybe 24 hours from now or maybe 24 days from now.
To use that in a real-world example, if you had a sensitive data set that suddenly was being accessed from South America, and you have nobody that works in South America, and they've been accessing it for several months, you'd probably want to know within a few minutes versus several months if that type of access was happening. Because honestly, in a few months, it's probably too late.
So you see here, not only do you see the anomaly, you see the actual error that has occurred. In this particular case,
it's an invalid password.
Invalid password, or the password has expired. If you scroll on down, okay, so you can see in this example, you can see secret data was accessed, and this user had insufficient authority to do that. So not only you see the anomaly, but you see the data set that's associated with that.
And DataLenz alerts you visually. That way you can quickly see the severity of the anomaly, whether it be security-based, invalid password, too many times accessed, or if it's just a use anomaly.
If you have an alert set up for it, then you can get notified now, the alert process.
And speaking of alerts, let's show you how you can set that up. Super simple. So here we have our anomalies, and we have anomalies for access type, anomalies for the resources, and IP address, time of day access, and countries. Let's click on countries. And here we have this resource is accessed from outside the US. That gives us that anomaly. So let's say we want to set up an alert that says, anytime that we see something like this happen, please let me know. And here I could set up the name, and this would be access outside of USA. And then status is active. The severity, if it's a warning, serious, or critical, every incident that's outside the USA. So with the users, it would be asterisk, which means any user that accesses outside the US of A, country US. Set here your email, Steve, and you can even set up SMS. So you could put in your phone number. So anytime that this alert happens on your mainframe, you'll get a text message. And, of course, you can add multiple people to get these notifications. And then you can also send messages to the console and type in a custom console message. You can set that console message up as these strings to let you know what that alert entails, and it's safe. So now that we set that up, anytime that we have an access outside the USA, I'll get an email and a text message and be alerted on the console.
It can be routed to various places. You don't have to go to the console with it. You can go. It also reports it back to the dashboard.
And so the power of that is that now when these anomalies happen, you don't have to run a report and look through the report to see these. And when it happened hours, days, or months ago, you'll know as soon as they happen. Okay, so what do those alerts look like? So here's our alert page, and you can see all the alerts that have happened. Why don't you walk us through some of these, Rick?
Yeah, well, so the first one here, it tells us that on July the 6th, that user, RPJ0, accessed that resource, cust sales data file 1. It tells us the group, and the type of access was to read the job. It was a TSO job from Washington, Oklahoma, and that IP address. Let's look at the policy for that state check geofence resource. It says customer sales is the data set, cust.sales is the data set, and the state is not equal Virginia or Texas.
Okay, so this alert was triggered because this data set was accessed outside of a geofence.
Right, that's correct. Okay. And the next one, out of bounds, this one had connection termination. The country was not the U.S. or USA. Again, it was RPJ1 outside of U.S. or USA, and it was from Brazil.
So we have a feature of DataLenz called the connection hammer, and whenever an access is severe enough, all connections to that user are terminated.
With the connection hammer, what it does is that in this particular case, we have a policy, out of bounds connection termination. So the policy says if the country is not equal to U.S. or USA, the event source is ZOS. If they're doing a TSO logon or FTP, it's outside the USA, and we say send revoke ID to event location. And that basically terminates the connection. And in this case, we produce a custom message out on the console, connection termination. We have those keywords available to you to fill in. And we detect that event that somebody's trying to log on outside of the US or USA. We terminate their log on, and they can't log on until someone from security intervenes and resumes their access.
This is important too, because if you have someone trying to log in that's outside the US and they go unchecked, they can try and brute force their way in because there's no alerting in place. DataLenz kind of shuts that type of access off.
Yeah, and the next one is the out of bounds time. That's a unique thing as well. In this particular case, we say if they've logged on between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. And they access that resource, cust.ensure, send an alert. This one doesn't terminate their connection. It just alerts people. In this case, it alerts and sends an SMS message. It also puts a message on the console. There's a message that was freeform.
So what that might look like on the console here is this is an alert that they use the policy that we just looked at. This is an out of bounds time event that occurred. And this is the message that you would see that you just saw. We set up in the alerting policy. We can see this is the date, the time. It was outside of the time that we specified. Didn't terminate their connection. Who knows, what could be happening. That maybe he forgot something to log back in. But we do want to know when that happens. And that's one of the many facets that DataLenz allows you to set up and see, which would be nearly impossible otherwise, just to see this kind of overview of your mainframe access. So a lot of security products are designed to keep people from coming in. There's still bad actors that can happen within. right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, 64%, I think, is the statistic. 64% of all breaches of data security right now are from inside people.
I mean, there could be a user has a really high EXCP count suddenly. That'd
Absolutely.
be kind of out of the norm. That's probably something you might want to know about. Or, they work from their house, but they're normally in the Chicago area, and suddenly they're logging in from New York or from, Italy. That would be an anomaly that you'd want to know about, right?
Yeah, actually, so they work from their home office and they work from the corporate office. But now they go to Starbucks and they start logging in from there. DataLenz will flag that and say, hey, this is unusual activity. We may want to check this. Whether it's got a high EXCP count or whatever, we will flag that and just say, hey, this is unusual for this particular user. And the power of DataLenz is that it provides insight into how your data is being consumed by your users.
These anomalies would be nearly impossible to see with just reports. You need a tool like DataLenz to be able to take this huge amount of data, compile it down to something that's visual, and give you the ability to have the knowledge of when something is out of the ordinary.
Right, and drill down into the data access of how your data is being accessed. It's important to know that, and it's insight that you don't have today. So I know that each company that we've engaged with, they use DataLenz a little differently and for different reasons within the organization, and the value that we bring to the table is very affordable compared to the insight that we provide. The wealth of knowledge that you get, the time savings, and also the flexibility of being able to eliminate some of the reporting that you're doing now, perhaps through a batch process or other manual process. Each organization has its own requirements for how they want to look at data. And a lot of them are the same. That's why we provide the widgets that we have. There's little or no training. You don't have to be a programmer. You don't have to learn it's not some long project to put together alerting or policies that would be developed, or even widgets that you may require.
It's very self-explanatory and well laid out. Very, very small training. I mean, probably no more training than what we just did in this webinar. The DataLenz dashboard, while it's easy to use, it's also super customizable. In fact, we have a customer now that is actually using this as their scene. And that's how powerful and customizable this dashboard is. You decide what is most important. If you don't want to see all these scorecards, you take them away. Maybe you want to always see anomalies when you log in, and they're always front and center. The point being is that our dashboard not only is super easy to use, but also super customizable. We'll just briefly look at how DataLenz would actually operate in your environment.
So this is the architecture. We have a process called DLZ cap, is a capture task. It runs as a started task. It's written in Java that runs under ZOS. There is one for each LPAR. Only one of these will talk to a database where we record the events that we're capturing. The DLZ cap, it captures and sends events to a WebSocket that is running over here. And in this example, it's Apache Tomcat. It could be Liberty. We also use AWS. I mean, there's any web server. You can run DB2 or MySQL. DB2 if it's running on the mainframe, or MySQL if it's running on the server, web server. There's an analytics engine in the dashboard. There's a data miner. There's an admin portion, and there's a dashboard component. You've got these four processes inside the web server. The miner portion of it can reach out to third-party service providers to do SMTP for email, SMS, and geolocation. We also have an embedded geolocation database as well, configuration, but in this case we're reaching out to a service provider, and then that serves up the information to a web server, a web browser that Steve's been showing you throughout this. The administration, the analytics and alerts all are brought through here. We have multiple ways to configure. It's really flexible to do. And so the dashboard and the capture task are Java based. The CICS portion is running native assembler. The IMS portion will be native assembler, as well as running on the IBM ZOS site.